But first, it has been a whirlwind fall for Queen's Park. Lots of work got done, and lots of it was pretty controversial as well. Like this unprompted comment from Doug Ford about Mississauga Mayor Bonnie Crombie on Tuesday.
I know we have a few mayors that, don't want to play in the sandbox, and one being Mayor Crombie, and I don't know what her issue is.
He also said that those who don't want to play along, well, they should stop whining. Joining us now is somebody who takes it all in. John Best, who is the publisher of the Bay Observer. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Shiona.
You can't say this fall has been boring and that nothing has happened.
No, it's quite unbelievable. This whole business of not only Bill 23, but this strong mayor legislation, which just seems to be getting more bizarre with every passing day. The idea that now in Toronto and Ottawa, and soon, I guess, coming to a city near you, is this notion that a mayor can put legislation through with only 1/3 of, my question is, why 1/3? Why not just have the strong mayor can do whatever they want? But it really, we're really in some very uncharted waters for sure when it comes to what's happening with municipal government.
Well, I mean, the strong mayor powers I find particularly interesting and a little bit disturbing, but then Doug Ford has kind of a history of wanting to use his power as the premier of the province to rewrite what's going on in municipalities with, just the sweep of a pen.
Well, earlier, of course, he just unilaterally 4 years ago cut the Toronto City Council number in half. So, I mean, we've always said for years that the municipalities are a creature of the province, but never seen it enforced quite the way it is now. And it was interesting yesterday, being the last day of the legislature of this session. The lieutenant governor was not overly discreet in her remarks, where she talked about the importance of democracy and protection of our rights, and clearly, I think she had some of this legislation on her mind as she unfortunately signed it into law.
Well, the other thing that I find really interesting about it is that it's being applied to the two largest municipalities in Ontario to begin with, but it's not a change that affects every council. It's just select few.
Yeah, they've talked about it applying to large cities, so I guess you have to define large, but with that in mind, it would sound like Hamilton is not too far down the list, Kitchener, Windsor, Sudbury perhaps. So I guess the question is, what's he going to do in Mississauga with this obvious spat going on with the mayor there? It's we're really, and it's not, the part that bothers me a little bit is what is the legislation that the strong mayor provision will apply to. It sounds like it's mostly housing, but then I heard transit mentioned yesterday, and you start to wonder, is there any limit, frankly, to how he envisions the strong mayor circumstance to take place?
Well, and apparently he can dole it out as he sees fit, based on the court decision that he got, as you referenced earlier, when he reduced the size of Toronto Council by half, and during an election campaign, I might add.
That's right. That was pretty disruptive for a lot of people, and I don't think he made any bones about it. He was trying to get rid of. He thought by cutting it in half, he could get rid of a lot of the more left-leaning members of Toronto Council. And as it turned out, it didn't really work out that way. The 25-member council ended up being pretty much ideologically not much different than the one that he got rid of. So, it's an interesting time to see a lieutenant governor. I know, it's a ceremonial position. She has no power. The position has no power, but she would have very carefully thought about how she was going to express herself yesterday, and that was a significant move. I guess the other problem is we know that Ford will use the notwithstanding clause for for things that are even less important than the strong mayor and the Bill 23 provisions. He used it in labor, and he even used it when he wanted to put stickers on gas pumps. So even though he hasn't invoked the notwithstanding clause, I think everybody feels that would likely be the outcome if there was an appeal to, say, the Supreme Court about some of this really tough legislation that's coming down.
Well, with the strong mayor powers and with Bill 23, that's the More Homes Built Faster Act that, at least in part, opens up sections of the Greenbelt for development. I'm wondering if the mayors of the municipalities, regardless of size, who are not in favor of the Greenbelt development in their areas are going to be among the last to wind up with a strong mayor power where they could, make these decisions with only a third backing of their council.
Well, we already know they're not in the Greenbelt, but we know that the mayor of Ottawa has said he definitely will not use the powers, even though he has them. Be interesting, certainly, as we mentioned with Crombie, what her view would be. I believe our mayor has already suggested that she's not in favor of the strong mayor policy. So this thing could turn on Ford rather badly if mayors simply say we don't want to do this and we're not going to play ball. This could end up being quite a nasty experience. The only saving grace is, of course, the huge majority and the state of disarray of the other parties. The Liberals are really just struggling. And the NDP, it looks like they now have a leader, but it's going to take a while for her to find her way. So it's just, it's the Wild West, really, when it comes to legislation right now.
Yeah, we're in conversation with John Best, who's the publisher of the Bay Observer. I will say this for Doug Ford. When people have really let their feelings be known and they come out swinging against a policy or a position that he has taken, he has been willing to back down, if only temporarily. But what if the protests continue to the Greenbelt development? John, do you see perhaps Ford changing his mind on this, or has the die well been cast?
I think there is a possibility of him softening some of the provisions, at least. He has shown in the past, as you say, he occasionally will reverse course, and I don't see the protest on this abating at all. In fact, we haven't actually seen any implementation yet, and when we start getting what this was intended to do, in other words, if we start seeing houses in people's driveways and tool sheds converted into homes and triplexes popping up in single-family neighborhoods, I think that's when you're going to start really seeing the pushback. And that pushback won't be coming from necessarily elected officials. It'll be coming back from ordinary people who might otherwise have voted for the party. But I think Ford has made up his mind that what it tells me is that he probably isn't really looking for another term. He believes that this tough medicine is what's needed, and he's going to push it through even if it costs him the next election. And in terms of John Tory, who I think really surprised people by asking for the extra powers, asking for it to be extended to the 1/3, which would allow him to pretty much pass anything he wants. That I think was a bit of a shock, but he's already indicated that this is his last term. So you've got a couple of guys running the shop that really have not much to lose.
Yeah. Your comments about, how much of a willingness or lack thereof there might be if we start seeing some really outrageous shoehorning of housing into single lots. What happened to zoning? I mean, some of those laws were brought in because people were doing things like this, and it wasn't the wisest thing to do. It really created, quite a mess for a lot of neighborhoods.
Well, it would, the whole notion of neighborhood character appears to have just gone out the window in favor of getting these houses built. I guess the other issue is any significant legislation like this takes time before we see it actually on the ground. And 4 years is not a long time So the question is, what happens as your commercial says? What if this backfires? And frankly, we don't get the houses. He's talking about 1.5 million houses. What if we don't get the kind of house building that he thinks this legislation will provide? That could, and with all the disruption that's been created, and then not get the houses built, that could be a very nasty outcome.
Yeah, but if he's not running for re-election, he doesn't have to worry about that, does he?
No, but there's probably 100-odd people that sit nearby him that might have some concern about it as well.
Yeah.
It becomes a career. So, yeah, I think there's going to be continued pushback. I think we're in a period of turmoil here, and it's really kind of a alarming time to see democracy literally kind of drifting away. The Americans just went through an election where they put democracy on made it a ballot question, and everybody said, well, nobody's going to care about that, but it turned out they did. So we're looking at some really difficult times ahead, I think, Shiona.
Yeah. One of the headlines from this week, because of so many other things that were happening, kind of went by the wayside, but it was one that really caught my attention, was that there might be some corners of the Ontario Liberal Party looking to Mike Schreiner of the Green Party for leadership.
I saw that, and I saw that Mr. Schreiner moved fairly quickly to deny it, but I think what it tells you is that the Liberals probably haven't yet got it. The fact that they would go to somebody that's on the extreme left side of the spectrum suggests to me that the party still sees itself for some reason to be in competition with the NDP. And, I think that's the reason they're sitting there with 8 or 9 seats right now. It's because they moved way away from the center. And certainly the messaging of the fact that somebody even approached Schreiner suggests that, they still think that's the way to go. There was a meeting here last night of local Liberals, and about 100 people turned up, and about half of the provincial caucus was here. Clearly they're a demoralized group, and they're not sure how to move forward. I see that a former member of the Wynne cabinet, who's now an MP in Ottawa, Yasir Naqvi, is thinking of running for the party. He represents an Ottawa riding, which, I don't think you can say, in Ontario there are safe Liberal seats anymore, but if there is one, it would probably be in the Ottawa area. So, he'd be a more likely prospect, I would think, for the party, somebody that's already been a member and somebody that's served in government, but we'll see.
It is an interesting question. They do need to rebuild, and, the Green Party has been great with Mike Schreiner, but he's the only member that they've had. So maybe,
that's right.
In politics, that is, strange bedfellows. John, we've got to wrap it up there. Really great to speak to you, as always.
My pleasure, Shiona.
John Best is the publisher of the Bay Observer.